Greetings everyone, my name is Raevyn McKnight, and I will be doing my video analysis project over the 2022 film Don't Worry Darling. Don't Worry Darling follows a happy 1950s housewife, Alice, in the perfect nuclear town of Victory, where all of the men, including her husband Jack, work together on the Victory Project. Everything is perfect until Alice witnesses a strange incident occurring outside of Victory in the Forbidden Desert. Soon, Alice begins to notice that everything in the town of Victory is just a bit too clean, too organized, and too artificial. And Alice is soon correcting her suspicions as she finds out after a failed electroshock therapy incident that she, as well as all the other women of Victory, have been kidnapped and unknowingly put in a virtual reality by their husbands to live the perfect lives that the men want. In this presentation, I'll be explaining functionalism, alienation, conscious/unconscious, deviance, as well as showcasing how these things come together in the film Don't Worry Darling. So in Don't Worry Darling, we have a antagonist, Frank, and a protagonist, Alice. And we watch as both of these two battle it out to see who will be able to come on top in figuring out what exactly the Victory Project is. We see Alice constantly challenge his authority while her husband, Jack, goes against her in honor of Frank, while Frank also tempts Alice in hoping to be challenged by somebody in the Victory Project because he's never been challenged before. Everybody usually just falls under his command and does exactly what he asks. Functionalism. Functionalism is social sciences theories based on the premise that all aspects of society, institutions, roles, norms, etc., serve a purpose, that all are indispensable for long-term survival of the society, as stated by Britannica.com. The functionalism that is displayed in the film Don't Worry Darling is primarily reinforced by Frank, who is the main antagonist of the film, as well as the hypnotized wives who are caught inside of the Victory Project simulation. The functionalism of the film was Frank and the women constantly explaining and emphasizing on just how important it was for the women to stay home and cater to their husbands while in this virtual reality. Now, as we know, everything that happens in Victory is not real. Victory is a simulation that the wives were implemented in by their kidnapping husbands. This was due to the men feeling as though without their women catering to their every need and only caring for them, they couldn't be the men they were meant to be. We see this in the ways that Jack becomes so upset when Alice lets her job overshadow what he believes are her natural duties to him as a man, such as sex, cooking him dinner, and etc. In the film, we see Frank ask the men, are they the men that they say they are?
Are you the man that you say you are?
Of course, the men respond with yes. However, as the film progresses, we see this is far from the truth. In reality, they aren't. And when making their wives' entire lives revolve around them in the simulation instead of what they truly want, such as living their original lives, it helps the men feel superior instead of inferior compared to their women, because they now have somebody who is completely under their thumb without even knowing it, with their wives catering to them and stroking their egos, helping them believe that they are the men that they claim to be. As stated by Britannica, alienation is social sciences, is the state of feeling estranged or separated from one's work, products of work, or oneself. Alienation is shown on two accounts in the film Don't Worry Darling. First, with Margaret, who is the first woman of Victory to venture off into the Forbidden Desert with her young son. However, after seeing the truth of the simulation and losing her child, Margaret becomes manic, and this causes her to be shunned by the entire community, mainly the wives of Victory. Second is Alice, the main character of the film. However, instead of being shunned by the community first off when she ventured into the Forbidden Desert, she first distances herself, not trusting anything that is happening or anyone. This situation lasts until she is exposed by Frank at the dinner table and is then shunned by the table as well as her husband Jack for disobeying the one sacred rule of the suburb Victory. Women should never go to the desert. Deviance refers to rule-breaking behavior of some kind that fails to conform to the norms and expectations of a particular society or social group, as stated by RevisedSociological.com. In the film Don't Worry Darling, there are two instances of deviance showcased. Number one is the revelation that Jack and all of the men of Victory have actually kidnapped their wives and implemented them into the simulation without the woman's consent. This is an extreme case of deviance, especially upon analyzing the film and realizing that many of the Victory relationships were not pre-existing relationships. This is definitely shown in the reactions that the men have when Alice is trying to wake the woman up after murdering her husband Jack and walking outside with blood all over her, and she attempts to wake the woman up. All of the men's reactions showcase them being very scared, and that this could be a very obvious kidnapping situation. Like they're like, especially with the relationship of Violet and her husband, which I showed right here.
Please, don't.
The second instance of deviance that is shown in the film is a little less obvious. However, it is Alice having a job over her husband Jack and being the breadwinner of their relationship. Now, many may not see this as deviant behavior and believe this observation to be wrong. However, it isn't. Alice having a job over her husband and being the breadwinner of her relationship was a violation of social norms, especially in the real world. And considering the norms that are perpetuated in this film, the men are supposed to be the breadwinners and the head of the house. However, in the real world, Alice was the breadwinner and quote unquote the head of the house compared to her husband Jack, who mainly stayed at home and was just on his computer majority of the time. So to finish off this thought, one might even say that Alice's deviance is what led to Jack's deviance when really observing the actions of each character in the film. Consciousness/unconsciousness. Consciousness defines our thoughts, actions, and awareness. Unconsciousness is defined as the deep recess of our past and memories, as stated by diversity.social.com. In the film Don't Worry Darling, there are obvious showcases of the conscious and unconscious mind throughout the film. In Don't Worry Darling, Alice's conscious mind was transported to Victory. However, as the film progresses, we see her unconscious mind seep through, showing her the truth. Examples of this was Alice humming the song from her real life that she doesn't even know inside of the virtual reality set.
You see, I long to be.
Alice humming this song was also what saved her and brought her back her memories in the virtual reality Victory, and what in the end saved her from her husband Jack keeping her balled up inside of this simulation. Because once somebody goes into the virtual reality set of Victory, their entire past life, everything that they knew before, is wiped clean, and now they only know of Victory. Him humming the song led to her memories coming back after the electroshock therapy, and that's what led towards the climax of the film of her leaving Victory and also warning the other women before leaving. Symbolism. The idea that things represent other things, as referenced by liberalartsoregonstate.edu. There are two instances of symbolism in the film Don't Worry Darling. The first one being Jack's dance scene at the party. Jack's dancing scene was symbolism of Frank's control over Jack as well as the other men in the town of Victory. It showed that Frank truly had control over him. In the scene when he offered Jack up to dance for everyone after giving Jack a promotion, the scene very much showcased a dance monkey dance kind of vibe. It shows that Jack's need to please Frank would forever come over his wife Alice's need. Everything that Jack does, everything that was in Jack's being in the town of Victory was for Frank and was to better himself. It had nothing to do with Alice. Honestly, Alice was just a pawn to help himself feel like more of a man in order to impress the villain, Frank. In conclusion, Don't Worry Darling shows all terms of deviance, functionalism, unconscious/conscious mind, and alienation, as well as exemplifies real-world issues that pertain to men and their lack of communication, understanding, and insecurities that can influence their relationships in very negative ways. Thank you so much for listening to my thoughts in correlation to this movie as well as these terms.